Hi, friend. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe to the podcast and my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. By now, you know that I reversed my heart disease and lost 20 pounds by eating a whole food plant based diet. Head over to wellelephant.com after the show to grab my free plant based cookbook as my gift to you. And if you're really ready to take control of your health and reverse disease like I did, check out my online class, Ace Plant Based Eating. Well, you're in for a treat today. My guest, Christian de la Huerta, knows what makes good relationships great. His advice about paying attention to what bothers you about your partner is honestly some of the best relationship advice I've heard in a long time. You don't want to miss it. So let's just jump on in. Hi, friend. I'm Lauren Bernick, and I'm flipping the script about growing older. From rebels and rule breakers to wellness warriors and wise women, my guests have been influencers since before that was even a thing, and we're not even close to finished. Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother. Christian de la Huerta is a spiritual teacher, personal transformation coach, and award-winning author with over 30 years of experience. He has spoken at TEDx and led transformational retreats around the world. His books include Coming Out Spiritually and Awakening the Soul of Power, praised by Gloria Stefan as a balm for the soul, and winner of multiple book awards. His latest book, Conscious Love, Transforming Our Relationship to Relationships, offers practical tools for healing and deeper connection. Please welcome Christian de la Huerta. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. You did. You did. Thank you,
I
Lauren.
said it
Happy to be
crazy.
here with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. I'm very excited to talk to you. So, just give us a little background. I know you grew up in Cuba. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I was born in Cuba, lived there for the first 10 years of my life. So, I guess I don't know too many people, but who can say they lived in a communist regime, but yeah, which kind of shaped me in some important ways.
Such as?
Well, I mean, the big ways, of course, of freedom, the freedom of choice that we take for granted here. Um,
Yeah.
and also appreciating little things, like, for example, what's chewing gum to us here in the US? It's nothing. We stick a piece of gum in your mouth and you spit it out, don't even think about it. We had it better than most because my parents had friends who worked for foreign embassies, so a couple times a year we used to get a pack of chiclets and divide it between all of my siblings, and we'd chew it all day, and then at the end of the day, get a glass of water, put, a little bit of water, put toothpaste in it, stick our gum in it so it'd be minty the next day, and then hide it so my mom wouldn't find it and throw it out.
Oh, wow. And
I
you know,
know.
that's crazy. That
I
is
know.
um but your dad was a psychiatrist, right?
Psychiatrist, yeah.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And you were on your way to being a psychiatrist, is that right?
I was on track to get a PhD in psychology.
So, okay. Well, I think I skipped ahead. So you clearly moved to the States when you were 10. Where did you move?
We lived in Georgia, Milledgeville, Georgia, for the first 3 years, and then down to Miami, where I did high school in Miami, and
That
where my
must have been a
family still
culture
lives.
shock. Yeah.
Oh my
Was it
god.
crazy?
Oh my god. I gotta tell you, I swore when we left that I would never set foot in that town again
In
until they
Milledgeville?
paid me. In Milledgeville, yeah. It's a charming little town, but
Mhm.
I didn't speak a word of English. They didn't take kindly to foreigners. Um, and it was, kinda racist.
I
And
bet.
so I don't have really great memories of it. I swore that they'd have to pay me for me to go back, and they did. Like, I was paid by university years later to go back, so I did.
All right, good for you. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine like moving here and not speaking English because I lived in New York until I was 10 and then moved to Houston, Texas. And I had, a mildly similar experience, I would imagine. I just remember I had like a really thick New York accent, much thicker than I even have now. And, Jewish, and people didn't even know what Jews were in
Yeah.
Houston. I mean, obviously there were Jews there, but for the most part, it felt like that. And I felt really like a fish out of water. And I feel like, in a way, I'm sure it formed me and gave me a lot of really good qualities. Like, what qualities do you think that gave you to kind of be that fish out of water?
Huh. Well, I think in a roundabout way, it forces one to to get to a deeper level of self-acceptance.
Hmm.
Um, like for me, like I think part of it was I learned to speak English quickly. Like a lot of my, people kind of my age who stayed in Miami have a thicker accent when they speak English. So I guess I'm grateful for that. And I think it just forces you within, like, to get to
Yeah.
a deeper level of self-acceptance, because if you're not gonna depend on any kind of external validation, um, it's a good thing. So to
Yeah.
me, I got a little bit of a head start in that area. I think many of us get to that point and have to face ourselves. Um, but for me, I had to do that at an early age.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, clearly it worked out for you. So you were on your way to a PhD, and then what happened? What made
I
you switch?
I had an experience with breathwork. And breathwork is a big umbrella term. There's a lot of different things that people think of. Like anybody who's ever taken a yoga class has done breathwork, has taken breathing techniques. This is a longer process. You breathe in a certain way for about an hour and a half, and amazing stuff happens. And
Wow.
I've been doing it now all over the world for over 30 years. And Lauren, I've yet to come across anything that heals past trauma, emotional, psychological trauma, as quickly as it does. And on top of that, I mean, it heals at multiple levels, including physically. And I know that's hard to believe. I still have a hard time believing that when I hear those words come out of my mouth, but I can't argue with the results. It works. And I mean, and I've seen it happen so many times. And on top of that, you can access some states, like really high expanded states of being. Like, I can't tell you how often I've heard people say, after they do a session with me, I got to the same place I did in a plant medicine, whether it's ayahuasca or mushrooms. Like, you can access those expanded state of beings just by using your breath.
Yeah.
Um, and so some really ecstatic states of being, and it kind of shifts the way that you see yourself, and you see your relationship to life kind of shifts when that happens.
What is it that switches in your body when that happens? I mean, I have heard this from other people. I've done breath work, but not for like an hour, hour and a half. That seems, so I don't think I've reached that state. Well, I know I haven't, but so what is it that shifts or loosens up or lets go? What happens?
They haven't studied what's happening in the body, like scientifically. They're starting to do some of that research now. One of the theories about how it works is that when we breathe in in that circular connected way, you're triggering the release of DMT, which is the active ingredient in plant medicines like ayahuasca, which is actually produced by the body endogenously by the pineal gland. So that's one of the theories as to why people have visions and memories, and just like really profound healings happen. I think my take on that is that, which kind of, we have to talk a little bit about the ego mind. With to in order to get the visual that I'm seeing, is like we don't have time to get into that because it's a big conversation.
Uh-huh.
But ego basically means I. The word in Latin means I. So the ego is that sense of separate personality, of individual, separate self. Like, this is Christian, that's Lauren. Both a really helpful illusion, and also the source of all our suffering. And so I think that what happens when it's like, here's a great visual. If you put a baseball in the center of a stadium, that's the ego. Who we are is actually the stadium. And we've allowed this tiny, tiny part of who we are to think that it is all who we are, and to make some really important consequential choices from its very small limited, and always fear-based perspective. So that's kind of the problem with having an ego. It's also a huge leap in evolution. As far as we know, we're the only species that has a sense of self. There's some theories about the higher primates, the elephants, the dolphins, and the whales having a sense of who they are, but we don't really know what's going on inside of their minds. And so I think what happens in breathwork is that we pop out of that baseball and we have a glimpse of ourselves as interconnected with everything. A lot of people see themselves as, like experience themselves floating around in the cosmos, feeling at one with it all. Um, and so I think that's what's happening. I think for that period of time, we pop out of the little baseball with a limited sense of self, and we have a memory or an awareness of our interconnectedness to everything.
That's oh man, I've had a brief experience of like the very first time I've been practicing yoga for almost 30 years and a little breath work, but definitely nothing that deep. But honestly, on one of the first times I've talked about this before, one of the first times I ever did shavasana. Anybody who does yoga knows what that is. Corpse pose. You just relax and do breathing and let go and absorb your practice at the end. And, I was just lying there breathing, and I felt myself float out of my body, and kind of shook me and scared me because I had, never I didn't know what was happening, and I, like, awakened myself, and, I've never been able to get back to that, and that's been, like, the goal, and that was one of the first times I did yoga, like,
Yeah.
beginner's luck kinda thing.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of the breathwork practices that just like a regular old person can do to just
I mean,
try to
like any just use the breath, right? So remember to use the breath. It's really funny slash tragic that we take our breath for granted.
Mhm.
That we don't have to remember to breathe is probably a good thing because many would forget. Many of us would forget. Um, but it's like if we think of the breath, or it's our most loyal, most faithful companion on this journey of embodiment of being alive. So if we would only take the time to acknowledge it, to connect with the breath, even for a couple of minutes a day, to just notice it, and so any practice that's going to help us deepen that connection with the breath, just do it. And it could be as simple as you're sitting in traffic, like pay attention to your breath, and don't, like notice your inhale, notice your exhale, begin to notice the subtle differences between them. There's many, many different breathing practices, as you know, but a really simple is like box breathing. You inhale for count of 4, count of 10, whatever works for you. Hold, then exhale for that same count, hold, and then do it again. Um, and again, there's so many practices, but they're all geared towards deepening our awareness of the breath so that we're
Mhm.
breathing with choice, with intention. And good to remember too that in most spiritual traditions in the world, and even some secular languages, the same word can mean breath or spirit. So think of pneuma, from which we get pneumonia, which in ancient Greek it meant both lung and soul. From the Latin spirare, from that root, we get respiration and inspiration or expiration. So that breath spirit connection it's all over the world, and it's makes sense, right? It is breath is life. It's what keeps us alive. It's what
Mhm.
animates us. So
Yeah.
so anything that's going to deepen our relationship to the breath, it's can only good can come out of that.
I guess your emotions get stuck in you and maybe the breath work lets it out because like when a child has a tantrum, they're letting it all out. I guess that's a form
Yeah.
of breath work and then they feel better a few minutes later. Is
Yeah,
that
they're like playing like if nothing happened. We
right?
we get into trouble with the emotions because we stuff them, we swallow them. We don't give ourselves permission to feel, like, and much less communicate those feelings. And I know this from personal experience, and even from watching my father, the psychiatrist, age. I know he was a great psychiatrist. I've heard that feedback from people who used to see him professionally. With his own emotions, I think he was clueless. And so watching him as he started getting older in life, is it some of those emotions that he had spent a lifetime suppressing? Because he was from that generation that mind was supreme and logic reigns, and the emotions were weakness, um, which is a whole other conversation we can have about that, because it's such faulty reasoning, and that conditioning begins at an early age, particularly for guys. Little boys don't cry. And wait a minute, what is up with that? Like, why is it only okay for little girls to cry? And what does it mean, right? Because it means the implicit message is that the emotions are weakness, and that the feminine is weak. It's like, wait a minute, like, so many faulty assumptions about that. The emotions aren't strength. They're not weakness. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just energy, like everything else in creation. Energy is that course through our bodies. And we get into trouble because when we stuff them, they get stuck in the body. And then what happens with that is, like, anger, when we stuff it, turns into rage. And then we walk around like volcanic eruptions just waiting to happen. And sadness turns into depression. It congeals into depression. And then we have to medicate that stuff. Whereas if we use the breath, right, like in the moment, you're stuck in traffic and you start getting upset, you start getting anxious about being late for a meeting, use your breath, right? Rather than what happens immediately is, like, we stop breathing and we start taking shallow breaths. And that's what anchors those emotional energies in the body. They get stuck in the body. And if we don't express them, let them move, get them back out, they turn into disease, right? Heart attacks, ulcers, all that kind of stuff. And so, of course, we don't want to walk around like 2-year-olds having temper tantrums. Like, we take responsibility for our emotions and our role in those, and we learn how to communicate those emotions responsibly. Um, but really important that we do that.
Yeah. Did your dad was so yeah, I kind of get the sense that maybe he wasn't a good communicator with you, or was he? Did you feel like you could talk to him,
I did
or
feel like I could talk to him, but he was very introverted. So he was more like, my mother was much more affectionate and effusive, and my father was like, all rational. Um,
Mhm.
and that's when I started to see, as he started aging, he would start to have emotions come up over which, some over which he was not controlling. And, like, after a lifetime of trying to control the emotions, he would start having like a little reactive thing with my mom, like an adolescent type thing. Um, and so interesting, interesting to
Yeah.
me. Like, and that's one of the main messages that I learned from that is, like, if you would have asked me 30 years ago, what was I feeling? I had no idea. I couldn't tell you. So I actually did some practices toward that. I had a grid of emotions, and I had a timer. This is before iPhones. Had a timer. I'd set it for the hour, and I had a list of emotions. And so the timer would go off, and I would say, "Am I feeling that? Mm-mm. Am I feeling that? No. Am I feeling that? Maybe." And that's how I started increasing and improving my EQ.
I think that's so smart. I mean, I feel like everybody should do that.
I think
What am
so.
I feeling? I mean,
I think
I
so.
yeah, I think that's really good. It's really smart to be in touch with your emotions and to really, I feel like one of the things that I've said this also before, that my mom was very she was chaotic, but one of the things that she was really good at was telling me, "You're entitled to feel how you feel." And I think that was huge. It was huge for me to feel entitled to my emotions and, to grieve when I was sad, or to whatever, to feel and I still practice that to today. Like, when I feel something, I feel it and I sit with it and I let myself feel it until I don't feel that way anymore. And then it's
That's
gone.
it.
It's like the little temper tantrum that we just
That's
talked
it.
about.
Then
It
you
is,
move
it's
on to
gone.
the next emotion.
Don't go on to the next thing. I know. So you kind of came to prominence with your first book coming out spiritually. So can you talk about that just like briefly a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, that book is, it's basically saying that it's really tragic that many people in the LGBTQ community struggle with spirituality. Like, I know I went through a phase of that, and understandably, right? We confuse it with religion, and the dogmatic approach to spirituality, and no wonder, like, given the treatment that many of us have received at the hands of religion. And so, but what is sad about that, what is tragic, is that before the patriarchal times and cultures and religions, back when the sacred feminine was honored and when women were in their power, and valued, um, people that we today call LGBTQ were not only spiritually inclined, but were actually honored and revered for the roles of spiritual service that we played all over the world. And so that book, what I did in that book is organize those roles that we played, name them, created some archetypes around that. And the message of the book is to help us reclaim our spiritual nature and find ways of expressing it that are appropriate, that are a match.
Mm, I love that. H- how old were you when you came out?
Young,
You
like
were? That's good.
I knew at a young age. Um,
And you were public with your parents about it or?
I didn't tell my siblings knew through my teens. I didn't tell my parents until my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they were accepting right away or
Yeah, they were
that's
accepting. I
good.
mean, my dad was great. He no, actually later, I think it came out officially, when I would turn 30. And it was the type of thing that I didn't feel the pressure to know. It's like my partners were always welcome. Um, there was, I almost didn't feel the need to say, but then I realized that I was using that as an excuse not to come out to them. And so I did, and I got a letter back from my dad. I was living in an ashram at the time in Hawaii. And my dad was great. He said, this will always be your home. You're always more than welcome here. You'll always be our son." And then he put on a shrink hat and he said, "However, I'd
Oh
encourage
God.
you to choose, interesting choice of words, another lifestyle because
Oh.
yeah." He said, I've worked with many homosexuals and I've cured many homosexuals. Yikes.
Oh.
Yeah, because that little does he know that at least two of those that he cured, in quotes, I slept with post-cure. Yeah. Because after we did our thing, he goes, "Oh, are you related to so and so?" I said, "Yeah, that's my dad." He says, "Oh, I used to
Oh
go to
my
him."
God. Oh God.
Yeah,
That's getting a little twisting the knife in your dad a little. That's great. I mean, you kind of
yeah.
okay. So I mean, one of the reasons I um asked you that was because well, how old are you? Can I ask?
I 65, 66.
Oh my God, you look oh
I
look at you,
know.
meow. You look great.
I know. Nobody ever guesses it. And I give
Wow.
credit to 2 things. One is peace of mind, self-love, self-acceptance, being able to look at yourself in the mirror. Uh, that to me is a game changer, and then the breath. The breath,
Yeah.
and those spiritual practices really help.
Honestly, I would have thought you were, like, at least 10 years younger and, than you are, at least, maybe, like 50, 55. And
I think
I
I
was
just turned
asking
66. I think I turned 65
you
last
don't
year.
even know. Um, well, I was asking because, just trying to get, like, a gauge of how things were when you were growing up and, um because my child came out to me uh, they go by they them. They were 15 when they came out and I was just so happy that they came out so young, that they knew who they were and that they were getting love and acceptance from their family and that just made me so happy and also not to, to poo-poo your dad or anything, because it was a different time, and that's
Yeah.
great that he accepted you. It's terrible what he said at the end, but I'm sure he was doing the best he could. But also for me as a parent, like, it just was so much easier for me. Like, I didn't have to explain everything to everybody. I was just like, our kid's gay, or as my kid likes to be called, queer. Kid's queer. That,
Yeah.
everybody's like, cool, fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a different time. And
It was a different time, and my dad was so
mhm.
Catholic. I mean, he grew up
Yes,
believing that that was a mortal sin.
right.
So I honor him for being as loving and accepting as he was.
Yeah,
To
of
and,
course.
he didn't have the language. Of course he didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Well, let's move on to your latest book, Conscious Love. So can you tell us what's the difference between unconscious and conscious love?
I think
Or
part of
am I
what I
not
did in the
asking the
book
right
is because I
question?
work with so many people people who are highly professional, people who've been in therapy, who've done spiritual work, and by far the majority of us get stuck where we get triggered, where we get stuck is in those romantic, intimate relationships. Um, which makes sense because it's where we make ourselves most vulnerable and we open ourselves like in the deepest ways, even physiologically. Um, and so, of course, that makes sense. And so, what I did in the book is come up with 10 of those areas, 10 of those challenges, and provided some ways of navigating those. And so, one of them, the first one is like how to approach relationships consciously. And to me, what that means is that if we're approaching the relationship, hoping that it's going to give us a sense of purpose, that it's going to validate us, that it's going to make us happy, forget it. Hang it up. Not, and there isn't anybody out there who's going to make us happy. And it's not their job to. Like, how unfair to put that responsibility on someone else. You are going to make me happy. Yikes. And so to approach the relationship that way is like they're doomed to fail, unfortunately. And so then if you're going to approach them consciously, what does that mean? Right. So that means that we know that only we are responsible for making ourselves happy, and that no one else can do that. And so there's different levels of doing that. And this is paraphrasing Ram Dass, the spiritual teacher, who talks about, the first level, there's three levels of conscious relationships. First level, the other party doesn't want to play, right? But enough of it works. Like you share good intimacy, maybe you co-parent well together, you travel well together, you live well together. There's enough of it, maybe sex is great, enough of it works that we say, okay, well, they don't want to play at the same level in terms of what I want to do in terms of my spiritual growth and development, but I'm happy here. It works. So then we can reclaim all the time, all the effort, all the resources that we would otherwise be spending looking for the one, um, in quotes, and we can focus that on our own personal growth and development. We'll skip number two, come back to that. Level three, both beings are fully realized, fully aware of our stadium nature, of our, you know, God essence, if you want to use that word, if that word works for you. Then the relationships becomes a like a sacred dance where you mirror that for each other. I don't think most of us or any of us need to worry about that one yet. So let's focus on number two. um, that's the one that's relationship as yoga. And as you know, yoga meaning union. So where we use the container of the relationship, the ups and the downs, the push and pulls of a relationship, um, to speed up our own process of healing. And in this level, both partners are using that container for that purpose. So rather than pointing the finger when something happens, when conflict arises, like you do this, you do that, you never do this, you never do that. It's like feeling the ouch. It's like of whatever they did or said, and like taking a pause, using the breath so that those emotions don't get the best of us. It's like, all right, how do I do that? How because guaranteed, if whatever they do is getting us, we're doing that in some way as well. And the more that whatever they do gets us, gets our goat and triggers us, the clearer the sign that we're doing that in some way too. And it could be completely different. The details could be completely different. It could be in the way that we treat ourselves. rather than the way that we're treating others. But it's a safe bet. And so that's what it means to use a relationship consciously. So we're using it as a way to shine a light on the areas in us that are in need of healing. Like
Mm.
what our blind spots that we're not ever going to be able to see, right? That's what a blind spot it is. But boy, can I see it over there in my partner.
Okay, so you're saying like if your partner does something that repeatedly annoys you, triggers you, whatever, then that's what you need healing in yourself. So
Yes,
and really you can only control what you're doing. You can't control what they're doing.
exactly,
So,
exactly. So
okay,
here's an example of that. Some years ago, I was dating somebody, and I knew it was in relationship material, just in terms of self awareness and how much work there was a gap in that area, how much work we had done on ourselves. But it worked for what it was. Neither wanted more than what it was, which basically was great sex.
right.
Um, but suddenly disappeared. Like didn't no messages, no texts, no emails, no phone call, nothing. Um, called him at work and wasn't working there. So now I'm thinking, wow, what's going on? Is it drugs? Is there alcohol? What's going on? But I wasn't focused on here, so I was focused over there. So I didn't get it. Um, so subconsciously, of course, we don't set out to do this, when we get up in the morning consciously. So subconsciously, I created another situation. I was flying to New York to meet a literary agent that I was working with at the time. And she was great about communication. She'd get back to me within a day, at most two, if it was a weekend. A week goes by and I hadn't heard from her. Now that got my attention, right? Two people from different walks of life kind of ghosting me. So really easy to see it over there, right? Like, what are they doing? They're not showing up. They're not doing what they said they were gonna do. They're not keeping their word. They're not keeping their agreements. Easy to see there, like shove that mirror in their face. This is hard, right? Turning that mirror around. How do I do that? So I started that practice. Like, right, it took me a few days because I was focused on relationships. Am I showing up in that relationship? Yeah. Am I doing what I said I would do? Yes. Am I keeping my word and my agreements? Yes. And then it hit me. In relationship to my writing. Like, how many times had I said to myself, this is just me and me. Nobody else knew about this. Like, I'm going to finish that chapter by such and such a date. I didn't do it. I was doing other stuff. I didn't renegotiate the deadline with myself. I just kept doing other stuff and ignoring it. And I was doing the same thing. I wasn't showing up for my writing. I wasn't showing up for myself in that particular area. And oh my God, once I had that realization, within the hour, Lauren, I'm not exaggerating, within the hour, they both called.
Mm,
So no longer that I need to create an external drama like we do in our lives, so that I would get the message, right? Dude, make a choice, right? There's no law that says you have to finish the book or finish the chapter, but just bring consciousness to it, right? Either renegotiate the deadline, extend the deadline with yourself, or choose not to write the chapter, right? There's many
mhm.
choices I have, but just bring it to consciousness.
Yeah, self-awareness is really it's a hard, but it's really not hard. I mean, it's a practice. It's like everything else, once you get in the habit of it. And I like that you figured that out. And it's so true, like the way the universe works. It's crazy how it always,
Yeah.
once you get it figured out, it makes
Yeah.
life a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
You
hard to
you're
figure.
right, like, it's hard. It's not easy to look at ourselves and ask the hard questions,
Yeah,
Why do I get triggered by that behavior?
right.
Why do I get in these repeated patterns of relationship that sometimes feel like it's the same boring movie, only with a different co-lead, a different actor, but the same kind of crap coming
Yeah.
up, the same arguments, the same patterns, the same triggers. Like, at some point, we gotta get honest and say, "Wait a minute, there's one common denominator in every one of those arguments, in every one of those relationships, and it's right here.
Yeah.
Why do I do that? Why do I keep attracting that?"
Yes.
Without judging, without making ourselves wrong, but just in the sense of what you're saying, becoming self-aware so that we can do the stuff at choice, not subconsciously.
Is is it enough just to accept or to be aware, or do you have to go further than that? Just to identify the problem and to accept it and then to try to work on it? Or I mean, or are there other steps to that?
I mean, depending on the issue, of course, but yeah,
Yeah.
self-awareness is this first step, and I think it's half the battle. And then, no, I think in some areas, some healing work is needed for
Mhm.
sure. I see it all the time come up in breathwork. I see it come up in my retreats, in my coaching. That one thing's understanding it, um, but sometimes I think that's why sometimes the talk therapy, the cognitive therapy, falls short. With all due respect,
Right.
and knowing something while we do something and understanding the patterns definitely beats not knowing and just doing things unconsciously. But sometimes a little step is further, and that's where the breath work comes in. That the breath work bypasses the mind and it goes to the source of where that trauma lives in the body, and it clears it. And that's why I jumped tracks and went, because it works so fast and
Yeah.
heals so profoundly in so many levels.
Yeah, it's really nice to see results rather than just, I mean,
Yeah,
again, not to shit on therapy because it certainly has its place, but I mean, I have also seen family members be in therapy for 20 years and I feel like, have they made any progress? I can't see
exactly,
it.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
so, but, but then again, my daughter's a therapist and she works actually with, the LGBTQ community, and with kids, really, like, and that's really nice, and I feel like, so I know for sure that she helps people, and I like I said, I know it has its space.
For sure,
Um,
without a doubt.
yeah,
And
but,
I'm grateful that your daughter is helping kids in that area. I didn't have any support in that area when I was
I know.
growing up.
Is it like I said, that's why I wanted to know how old you are because, like, the world is just so different. It's just
Yeah.
such a different world, and I love it. Um, so what are the foundations that the most successful relationships have, or what are the elements, things in common?
That's a great question. Communication for sure. Um, self-awareness, right? Otherwise we just stop and understanding some basic principles like what the ego is. Because what happens otherwise is we just project all that stuff on each other and we blame each other and we get caught in power struggles. And you did this, no, you did that, and we get defensive, um, and we attack each other. And that's not to say that, of course, there's conflict in every relationship. That's part of what it's about, and part of what happens whenever two human beings get that close and that intimate. But as long as we're pointing the finger and blaming the other, it's like there's no way that we can grow.
Yeah.
It's a trap. And it doesn't excuse their behavior, right? It's not about exonerating or writing off what they do if it's something that they're doing repetitively. Um, so it's not walking away from those difficult conversations at all, but it's owning that we have a role in that, right? Like even
Yeah.
even if we just put up with a certain behavior over and over again, it's like that. At some point, we're complicit in that,
Yeah.
and we got to stop pointing the finger because we're putting up with it.
Mhm.
And if we're allowing anyone to disrespect, to dishonor us, then at some point, after the second, maybe the third time it happens, at some point, now we're responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
And what else do you think? Do you think, I mean, growth, trying to grow together or wanting the best for each other, or what are some
Wanting
other
the best for
things
each
that
other for sure.
I think that's important?
Respect, that basic respect, allowing room for imperfection, um,
Yeah.
and, just, understanding that we're all human, that we're all on this journey. I think for me, it's gotta be a level 2, right? That they've gotta be willing to do the work that a relationship requires. A
Mhm.
level 1 is like, I understand it, but it wouldn't be enough for me personally. Um, I want somebody who is willing to do the work and who's willing to use that container, the ups and the downs, the triggers, the arguments, rather than getting caught up in a power struggle, to do the work so that
Yeah.
we're both growing, we're both healing.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
that's what makes
important.
a relationship, it's the fastest way to grow, like a conscious relationship, because of the blind spots, which we're never going to see. I'm looking in this mirror in front of me. The blind spot is behind me. If I turn to the left and look at that mirror to my left, now it goes the other way. But boy, can I see it in the other.
Mhm.
And that's why it's a great practice. I mean, just take it as a practice. Just be willing to ask the question. You don't have to buy into it, into whatever the result is, but just be willing to ask the question, how do I do that? How
Yeah.
am I doing that?
That's that's good. I what you talk a lot about giving your power away. What how do you even define power? What is it? How do we stop ourselves from giving it away?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think we also have a very ambivalent relationship with power. Part of us wants it, and part of us is afraid of it. And no wonder. How many abuses of power have each of us witnessed, both in our personal lives and in the world, with our political leaders, and corporate leaders, and religious leaders, etc. So, and then we've also been corrupted. We've been conditioned to believe that power corrupts, and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what good person wants to be corrupted? But what they forgot to tell us, or didn't tell us, about that quote is that Lord Acton was speaking specifically about political power. That's the one that was talking about corrupting, having a corrupting influence, not the personal power that you and I are talking about. Uh, so, power could be just a sense of agency. And how many times have each of us said yes when inside it's really not okay with us? It's like inside we really don't want that. But in order to maintain a semblance of peace, or we settle for crumbs of pseudo love in our relationships, we don't want to rock the boat too much. So then we override our true feelings, our desires, our dreams, and that's giving away our power. That's one of the ways in which we give away our power. And we settle. We settle for less.
Yeah.
And so think of, so I talk about worldly power, or the way that the world relates to power, or ego power, which is hierarchical. It requires that I push somebody down, step on them, put my knee to their neck in order for me to prop myself up and feel powerful. Um, it's power that depends on externals. Um, and so that's the kind of power we get confused with. Whereas think about what I call spiritual power or soulful power. It comes from within. Nobody can give it to us. Nobody can take it away. We are the only ones who give it away. And the sad part again is the reasons for which we give it away, right? For those, like, we settle for those crumbs of pseudo love, or acceptance, a semblance of acceptance, or semblance of peace in the home. And not to say that, you know relationships require compromise and negotiation. Of course they do. But that's one thing. Is settle, compromising about what we're going to have for dinner tonight. We have dinner tomorrow. We have sushi.
Right.
What we're talking about is compromising about our deepest self, and our goals and our dreams, and what's okay with us, our values. And that's the kind of stuff that's not good to compromise about, because it'll bite us
Yeah.
at the butt at some
I
point.
I like that you're saying our power is our agency, because that it gets confusing. Like, what do you mean by power in a
Mhm.
relationship? Because you kind of don't want to feel like you're trying to overpower somebody or get your way all the time. That's not
Mm.
what you mean. I don't think. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
you just mean your agency, like you said, when you are agreeing to things that you don't really want
Yeah.
because you're afraid, of the consequence, like they'll walk away or whatever. But I mean,
Exactly.
I feel like we do teach people how to treat us, and they treat us only the way that we will accept or allow.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think that a lot of people do settle. I think you're absolutely right.
And that's where we become complicit, right? And
Right.
putting up with it.
Hmm.
And
And
that's, that's the hardest thing, I think, in watching. myself and other humans grow and evolve and heal and transform, I think that giving up that victim, poor me, woe is me, blaming if only mom had done this or daddy hadn't done that, or if only the system was set up differently. And not to say that the system is set up fairly, it's not. And not to deny that there's things like racism and misogyny and that do have an impact, not to deny any of that. But as long as we're holding on, right, to or blaming what they did or didn't do, or the system or something outside of us, and holding that responsible for our state of being, we just gave our power away again. And so the simple way to get out of that, not simple, or maybe simple but not easy, it's like, no matter what happened in the past, and I'm really sorry about the crap that happened, because humans unfortunately do bad things to each other, um, and because of the way the system's set up. But as long as we're holding on to what happened, um, we give our power away. So the way around that is like, no matter what happened, no matter what happens going forward, we get to show up. We get to choose how we show up in response. And that alone, that choice, that reframing, pops us out of that helpless victim consciousness.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that. And to reiterate or to take it a step further, I think that we again are showing people how to treat us. So what you're saying is we get to decide how we show up. So that could mean what? Like, you don't get to treat me that way. Here's my boundary. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and like, I mean, we're getting into really fine tuning communications here. But every time we say, "You don't get to treat me that way," using that word "you,"
Right.
that little mind, that that little ego mind that is gets stuck in power struggle is going to say, "Oh yeah, you're going to tell me what to do? Just wait,
Right.
just wait."
Mhm.
So using I statements and
Yes.
saying things like, for example, "I don't want to be treated this way,"
Correct.
or "Whenever you do this, I feel."
Right.
Um, right,
Yes.
and that takes work.
Yes,
Right? It's a
yes.
lot easier to splatter somebody against the wall and say, you so and so, and you blah blah
Right.
blah." Anybody can do that.
Absolutely. That
Mhm,
is for sure.
mhm,
I
mhm.
that to frame it that way, like, when you do that, it makes me feel this way, or
Yeah,
like
and it's
so
taking
forth.
responsibility
Yes.
for our emotions, taking responsibility for everything. And again, that's not to excuse the behavior. It doesn't, right? If we've had this conversation calmly, not pointing the finger, not blaming,
Yes.
not getting stuck in power struggles, explaining how we feel when they do that, and the behavior's not changing, then maybe we have some choices to make around
Mhm.
that.
I think that it's really interesting. I think sometimes we really know ourselves when we're really young, and as we get older, we maybe tend to not listen to ourselves as much. And so I had my husband on the other day. We just celebrated our 35th anniversary, and I wanted to interview him.
Congrats. What an
Thanks.
accomplishment.
Yeah, it's a good one, and we're still really happy. And I don't say things like you. Well, I do. I say you need to stop wiping your face on the dish towel. That's like our biggest argument. I mean, that's our biggest ongoing argument. So as I was thinking, I was like, do I wipe my face on the dish towel? No. When I'm trying to reflect it back to me, like his most annoying thing. Luckily, he doesn't have any like huge annoying things to me. But when we were young, he was really a terrible boyfriend. He would say, if he was sitting here, he would say, "I wasn't your boyfriend." Like, in my mind, he was my boyfriend. And and so clearly he was not showing up the way I wanted him to. And I was younger, at 5 years younger, and it made a difference at that point. And finally, I just was like, you know what? I've had it with you. You just need to leave me alone and let me be and let me get over you. You're not good for me. And like, I'm moving on. And honestly, I went on with my life. I was heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. And months went by and, he kept calling and I'd just hang up on him and I'd be like, just leave me alone. Just let me move on. And finally, one day I answered the phone. This may be like 9 months later. And he's like, don't hang up. I want to talk to you. I want to come over. And I let him come over. And I kind of had heard something in his voice. And he said, I didn't realize like you thought I was your boyfriend. And, I was embarrassed because you're younger. And like I was 5 years younger. I think I was like 17 and he was 23 at that point, or 18, and so forth. And he said, look, I really missed you, and I didn't realize how much I would miss you, and I want to show up now and be the person that you expect me to be. If you give me one more chance, I'll never let you
Mm.
down. And I did. And like I always say, he's still on his first chance. So I mean, I really do think that we do, we do give our power away in that way. We do teach people how to treat us. And for me, that was like, you know, I want to be your first thought, not your last thought. I want you to put me first. And I guess if I had been older, I would have been able to communicate that better without just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Right, right.
But I think that because I was young and I didn't have all the language that I have now, I just knew to take care of myself. And that's why I think sometimes we, have to like listen to our younger selves, like the wild free one who knew, before all the conditioning and all the thoughts.
Yeah, that's great. Going
Yeah.
back to the washcloth for a moment, um, well, what about trying how you feel,
I've
right?
done it
What
all.
you've tried it?
Yes. Like when you wipe your mouth on the clean dish towels, it makes me feel like you're not listening to me, like you don't care, you don't respect what I'm, and they'll try for like a day or two and then I don't know, I don't think they mean anything by it. They just like pick it up, wipe their mouth on. I'm like, "Oh my god." I
Yeah.
think I've just had a so, I mean, I talk about it all the time because it does drive me just batshit crazy, but also I've just bought 100 dish towels and I just wash them like constantly. I'm
Yeah,
like, all
that's
right,
one way around it too.
we're just going to have this conflict in our life.
Yeah,
It's,
that's one way around it. I mean, in the overall scheme of things, it's pretty minor.
it's not bad, right?
Yeah.
So making a sharp turn now. Like you've talked a lot about also insecurity. How do we get a handle on that? Conquer insecurity.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that same word, self-awareness. It's gotta start there. Um, so understanding what makes us do the things we do. And so looking at patterns. What situations trigger that sense of not feeling, um, good about ourselves? And by the way, I know self-doubt intimately. My entire adolescence was one long depression, um, with suicidal fantasies.
Hmm.
And flash forward to today, like, no matter what happens in my life, the circumstances, whether a relationship works out or it doesn't, whether a project succeeds or it fails, in quotes, never, ever, ever do I feel insecure. Never, ever, ever do I feel that sense of self-doubt come up again. So I know I can be healed. And I think it's a combination of both understanding what triggers it and what that lack of self-acceptance is really going on, because that's what's at the core of that, of self-doubt, and then doing whatever we gotta do to heal that, whether it's therapy or coaching or breathwork is the one that did it for me. Breathwork is the one that healed even the stuff that I knew, like I knew cognitively, like there was no reason for me to question myself, or like I understood the source of my self-hatred, through my teen years that had to do with religion and being gay and all that kind of stuff. But understanding it wasn't enough. It fell short. And it was breathwork that just healed that permanently at the core.
I
And
still
that's why
find that
that's why I
crazy.
jumped tracks. That's why I never went for the PhD, because it works so fast.
That's just every time you come back to that, it just seems like it's so, like you say, so simple, but maybe not easy. I don't know. I mean, or maybe it is easy. I guess it
It is,
is.
it's simple. It's just breathing. It's just breathing, but there's a lot more going on in there,
Right.
right? It's that willingness to face ourselves and to ask the hard questions of why we do what we do and why we get stuck in these patterns and why we get triggered by certain things, right?
Mm.
And again, not rationalizing anybody's behavior, but let's take an arbitrary example: being late. You know, maybe you and I have a friend called Mary, and she's always late. And there I am on my lunch with her on Monday, like, Mary is so selfish and she's so self-centered and she only values herself, and we get all worked up about that. And then Mary gets there, and we put on a fake smile because we hate confrontation and having difficult conversations, and then we just, try to, then the sarcasms, the barbed comments starts dripping out of our mouth. Whereas you having lunch with Mary on Tuesday, it's like, wow, great, 20 minutes. Let me return that phone call. Let me catch up on my emails. So why is it that it triggers me, Mary's lateness? And then, when we ask those hard questions, it's like, all right, we'll realize, Michael, it's not when just Mary shows up late, it's when anybody shows up late. And if I zoom out even further, like, somebody cuts me off in conversation, they cut me off in traffic, it's a very similar feeling. So what are those feelings? What am I really feeling? And, kind of like what you were talking about with the dish rag. I'm not feeling seen. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling respected. I'm not feeling honored. I'm not feeling valued. And those feelings are way older than my lunches with Mary. So what's going on there, right? And if we're willing to do the work and go to the source of that stuff, then we're free. Then we're
Mm.
free. Anybody can show up late, and we can make the choice, right? Not with stuff. Like, we say, you know what, it doesn't work for me. So either, we have the conversation about how we feel when they show up late, and if they don't change the behavior, then we have a choice to make around that.
Yeah. That's true. So you don't always are you saying you don't always have to have the conversation if it's just fine with you if you've done your own work, or do you always?
Yeah, it depends on where you value the relationship.
Yeah.
Right? How much do you value that relationship? Is it worth having the conversation? I would say yes, right?
Yeah.
Go for it. If it's somebody you're having lunch regularly with, they have to mean something to you. So have the conversation.
Usually ask this question at the end. What's your best piece of advice for aging well? And you really need to give it because I'm telling you, you're doing it right, Christian.
Yeah, I think it's what we started talking about is being able to look in the mirror and sleep well and have peace of mind, and being able to look at yourself in the eyes when you look in the mirror. And so, bottom line, self-acceptance, self-love. And as we've been talking about, that's only possible through self-awareness. So being willing to do the work and ask ourselves the hard questions. And it's work, but it's priceless. That peace of mind is priceless.
Do you feel like it sounds like integrity also when you're saying like being able to look at yourself in the eyes? Is that also part of it? Just showing up with integrity, doing
Yeah,
the right things?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there a best piece of advice that anybody's ever given you?
Hmm.
Doesn't have to be age related.
I think I forget where I picked this up, but that self-care is not selfish.
Mm,
And because we've been so conditioned, right? To take care of ourselves is selfishness. And I think it's the other way around. I think it's mandatory, especially for people like us who are in the caregiving industry, to helping others, helping others, which so many of us do in different ways. We're so good at taking care of others, but if we don't take care of ourselves, like, the whole thing implodes, right?
yeah.
So it's taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. And if we gave ourselves 10% even of the care that we give others, start there, right? Even 10%. Because otherwise, what happens is when we give and we give and we give, that service orientation, this turns into servitude, and we start feeling trapped, and we start getting resentful.
Yeah.
And so it's not a good strategy.
What do
So
you do
yes,
to?
by all means, be generous, give of yourself, and give to yourself. Like, take
Yeah.
care of yourself, primarily, and it's the opposite of selfishness.
What are some of the things that you do to take care of yourself or show yourself love?
Spending time in nature. Um, I love taking baths.
I do
Um,
too.
better when I have a hot tub, but I don't these days. Um, but yeah, submerging the body in water. Time alone, for me, it's mandatory. Like, that's where I refuel. That's where I know I've gotta take time alone, and it's when I'm on the road for 3 weeks, when I've been on and just having too many conversations, too many interactions, too many doing a retreat after another retreat, that's when I start depleting myself, and that's when we make ourselves, that's when we open the door to illness, when we open the door to reactivity and, saying or doing something that we're then gonna regret.
Yeah.
Um
Do you have a favorite health or beauty product? What kind of stuff do you put on that face of yours?
I think in my case, like, I started young, like, using moisturizer. I use these days, I think, what do I use? I think it's Kiehl for Men,
Oh, yeah.
but it
That's a
doesn't
good one.
matter. I think just moisturize and
Yeah. Moisturize.
and take care of yourself inside and out, right? I
Yes.
think that's the real important one is taking care of yourself in the inside.
I agree from the inside out.
Yeah.
What's your favorite concert you've ever been to?
Oh, that's a hard one. I just recently saw Coldplay, um in Denver, and it was an incredible show. It's a beautiful and heart-opening and such positive messages. Um, that one stands out, and
Yeah, he plays the hell out of that piano. I saw him a long time ago. Chris Martin.
yeah, he
Where'd you
gives
see?
himself 100%.
Yeah, was that at Red Rocks or where was it?
No, it was a stadium. It was what used to be called Mile High. I forget what it's
Oh,
called.
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in Denver.
So that's your favorite, or is that you
I
have
I
another
think
one?
that one stands out, maybe because it's recent. I went to a Supertramp concert long, long ago when I was in college that was amazing. Um,
Yeah, they're great.
yeah. And I think they
Good.
were they were one of the first to, like, really use video and, like, huge video screens, and, maybe it helped that I was on mind-altering
Yeah,
substances,
and not
but
breath work.
but that one really stands to mind too. It's, like,
I've
amazing.
never seen them, and, I go to a lot of concerts. That's why I always ask this because I love concerts.
What about you? Which one
My
stands out
favorite
for you?
I was just talking about this one. I think I've seen so many. I've seen, like, everybody, but I said this one last week when I talked to my husband. I think, it was a long time ago in the early '90s, and we saw, Jane's Addiction, but Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers was playing with them, and
Oh,
we
wow.
we were, like, over the stage, like, it was in a very small space, and so we were over the stage and looking down on them, and it was so great, but I've seen just
Wow,
a
what an
million,
experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just a million I could name. I mean, we saw Paul
Yeah.
McCartney not too long ago. He was phenomenal. So, I mean,
Springsteen's amazing.
I have never seen Springsteen. Yeah. So you've seen him?
Mhm, a long time
Yeah,
ago.
that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Great show
Good.
too.
Well,
I saw
well,
Madonna when she first started.
oh yeah.
She put on a great show.
Which you saw it like a long time ago,
A
like in
long
the
time ago
'80s,
when
'90s?
Holiday was a when Holiday
Oh,
was
that
a
was in
hit.
the '80s.
I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know,
I had
yeah.
that whole outfit with the hair bow and the rubber bracelets and the mini skirt.
But she was great. She put on a great show.
Yeah. We saw her probably 10 years ago, and she was still putting on a great show.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's a good one. Well, Christian, thank you so much for sharing. It's been so nice talking to you. You're a lovely human, inside and out. And for everybody else, go try some breath work, and I'll put all your information in the show notes about your books, your
Thank
retreats, and
you.
so forth.
And
All
thank you
right.
for saying that about a lovely human. It takes one to know one.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much for those words and for having me on the show. It's a beautiful conversation.
I appreciate
Um,
it.
yeah.
Thank you. Take care.
Take
Bye
care.
bye. Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.